So have you recently signed a contract to purchase a timeshare or maybe timeshare points? Anything timeshare? I'm here to hopefully help you out today. We're going to be talking about knowing and understanding your right of rescission so you can hopefully cancel on time to not be stuck in that timeshare forever. Hello and welcome to Destination Timeshare. I'm Jeremy. In this video, I'm going to be giving you some tips on how to take advantage of your right of rescission when it comes to that timeshare that you might have just purchased. But I do want to start out by saying this is not to be considered legal advice in any way, shape, or form. But if you do think you need proper legal advice, definitely seek out an attorney who can hopefully help you with that. Now, I know this is a pretty long video, but it does have a lot of information packed in here. I do implore you to watch this video all the way to the end. But I also do have the video broken down into a number of different sections, and I even have a very special section towards the end for those people that might have actually purchased in Mexico or even internationally. And there are timestamps down in the description box below that you can actually touch on or click on, and it'll take you right to that section of the video. But also, depending on what type of device you're watching this on, you might actually see those broken out into chapters in the video timeline. So take advantage of that if you want to kind of jump around this video a little bit as well. Let's talk about first thing you need to do. You've just made a timeshare purchase. You may be committed to 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I've even seen some numbers as high as $150,000. Pretty astronomical numbers there. So now first up, we actually need to find the contract. You might have it already. That's great. But if you don't, you might not know exactly where to find it. There's some tricks that timeshare developers sometimes play with contracts just to make it a little bit harder for you to find your rights of rescission within the contract. First up, maybe they won't even give you the contract. That's kind of a dirty trick. Hopefully they didn't do that with you. If they did, give them a call, email them, do whatever you can, do whatever you need to do to get a copy of your contract. They might have even actually given you a USB thumb drive. You know, one of the things that kind of looks like this. You have to plug it into your computer. Timeshare developers, they like to give you these thumb drives because they know a lot of people don't actually have a computer while they're on vacation. So they're not going to even look at that thumb drive until they get home. Maybe by the time they get home, well, that time to cancel that right of rescission period may have already expired and, well, you're out of luck now. But if you have a thumb drive and you're still at the resort where you signed up or another resort close by, that resort or hotel property probably actually likely does have a business center. Head down to the business center, plug in the thumb drive, print out the contents if you can, read through the contents if you have to, print out only what you need to. Maybe if there's not a printer, take a photo of the screen, do whatever you need to do to kind of get the information off that thumb drive that you have. Worse still, maybe they even gave you a compact disc or a CD. Hopefully they didn't, because not many people have compact disc readers or players in their computer. If they give you that, maybe you can find a nearby kind of office supply store, office store. The FedEx store, Kinko's, they might have called it in the past. Well, they might be able to help you get the documents off that compact disc. That's kind of a really dirty trick there, giving people a CD that contains the contract. Now, another trick they might find, they might give you a big binder full of all kinds of paperwork, and they might take the contract and might take the rescission page of the contract and hide it in an inconspicuous place in that big, huge binder. There might be a pocket in the back, a pocket in the middle, a pocket somewhere else. If you can't find the contract and you have a great big binder, tear that binder apart. Look in every conceivable place. Look along the seams, make sure there's no opening. See if there is an opening anywhere where there could be a hidden kind of pocket, and, well, your contract might just be in there. So I do definitely hope you've been able to find that contract, and we're going to move on now with the assumption that you actually have the contract in your hands, or you can actually see it and read it. Next up, we need to determine what is the length, how much time you have to rescind that timeshare purchase. I'm actually going to put a link down in the description box below to an article on NOLO that actually gives you all of those different time frames. Depends ultimately on which state you purchased in and or potentially what state the property is located in. Those numbers, really, really important. Make sure you're still within your timeshare rescission period so you can take advantage of it with these other tips we provide today. We now need to kind of find out, where do we need to send our rescission letter or our notice that we want to rescind to? Obviously, we know we need to send it back to the timeshare company, but the instructions are very specific, and you need to make sure you follow the contract pretty much to its finest details here. So first up, we're going to take 20 minutes and we're going to read through the entire contract, beginning to end. You may or may not have done this when you're actually sitting at the table signing the contract. So now that you actually have that kind of what they call actually a cooling off period here, you're going to take the time to read that front to back, every word, every page. Don't miss any of them. And what we're looking for in there essentially is kind of the rescission clause, might be called the right to cancel clause, right of rescission, might even just be kind of a form letter to kind of right to cancel instead of kind of specific text within the document. Nevada is actually kind of famous for that. So now that we've hopefully read through the contract, we now know for sure how long we have to rescind and where to actually send that rescission letter to. And here you're actually looking for either an email address, hopefully an email address. Those are super easy. A fax, those are actually pretty easy still as well, even though fax machines seem like they're part of the 80s and 90s. Trust me, there's still lots of them around. Like I mentioned, those office supply stores earlier, well, they usually have fax machines as well. And also, most likely, a postal address. Now we have that information. We're now going to move on to what we need to do with that and writing up the letter that we're actually going to send to them. So what exactly do you need to put in that letter? Well, first off, you don't need to give them any reason why you want to rescind. It is your legal right under state law to rescind your contract within that period of time. You don't need to beg, you don't need to plead, you don't need to apologize for your rescission. Just write up a simple statement that you wish to rescind your contract, provide your actual contract number if there is one, give the date that you actually signed the contract, and make sure you indicate in there who actually signed the contract as well. So if it was between you and your spouse, say, my spouse and I, provide your names even there as well, wish to rescind this contract. Make sure everybody who signed the contract actually signs the rescission letter as well. And you can even provide a copy of the contract with that when we mail it, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So write up that letter. I'll even put a link to a Timeshare Users Group article, TUG article, kind of with some kind of basic instructions on what you can put in that letter. Now that we have the letter all written up and ready to go, we're going to send it. Probably the most important thing to do, right? What we want to do here is we want to actually use two methods of delivery. So if they gave you an email address and they gave you a fax and they gave you a mailing address, well, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to either email it or fax it to them. Easiest and simplest way to get it to them, gets delivered right away. Just make sure you have the fax number correct or you have the email address correct and you've sent it via that method. But in addition to sending it via email and fax, we're also going to send just a letter to them as well via standard U.S. Postal Service. Now, if all they provided you was a mailing address, well, then you're going to want to mail a letter to them. Definitely recommend sending via United States Postal Service. It's legally recognized versus one of the other carriers like UPS or FedEx. And in this situation, when you're mailing it, if you don't have an email or a fax and all you have is that mailing address, well, you probably want to send this one of two methods. First method I recommend is actually registered mail. That is the most secure method of mailing, but is also the slowest. Then you also have certified mail. Certified mail provides tracking, as does registered mail, but then somebody on the other end has to sign it. So you want to use one of those two methods. You want to definitely be able to track your letter getting delivered, just mainly for your peace of mind. Because ultimately, going back to those timeframes, those dates for rescission, it is all based on when you actually send the letter, not when they receive it. So email, obviously, it's sent and received at the same time. Now, I have heard of some situations where certified letters have gotten lost, been misplaced by the United States Postal Service, and they can't find it, they can't retrieve it, they can't deliver it. And that could be really a stress-inducing situation, right? So what you want to do here in the situation where you're sending something electronically or you're sending a certified letter, well, you also want to send, my suggestion is just a standard letter with a first class stamp on it. You know, just your ordinary mail. No signing, no tracking, nothing like that. But a little additional tip here is get one of these. This is a certificate of mailing. It's form 3817 at the United States Postal Service. They'll have these kind of on the counter out front. If they don't, ask them up at the desk. It's a little form where you fill out who it's being sent from and who it's going to. And then what they do is they actually put information on here of when it was mailed and it costs $1.95, and then they postmark it. So they put a stamp on here, which is essentially the postmark. So this certificate of mailing is kind of your proof that you mailed something from an address to an address and what date it was, and it has that postmark stamp proof that you did that. So if it ever comes down to, hey, you mailed it too late, you can kind of provide them with this information. Say, no, I didn't. I have it right here. So this letter via kind of just standard first class mail with a certificate of mailing, that really won't cost you more than $2.50 or $3. Really cheap method here for a little bit of extra peace of mind to just send that as a backup to ensure that in the event that they don't get one of those other methods, well, they hopefully will get this one instead. You want all your bases covered when you're talking about potentially tens of thousands of dollars. This is definitely going to require a visit to the post office, so take the time to do that. It's definitely worth the peace of mind. All right, now let's talk about what I actually mentioned very early on in the video. I have a very special section for this, and that is if you purchased internationally, and probably and especially if you purchased in Mexico. But this could also apply to the Caribbean or anywhere else in the world. This would actually even apply if you purchased in the United States and you live in Canada or elsewhere. Now, if you purchased in Mexico and you're actually still in Mexico, this is one of the very few instances where we might actually recommend going back in and actually doing your rescission in person. Now, I'd actually advise to probably not go back to the sales office if you can avoid it. See if there's like maybe a customer service or members services area on site at the resort where they can help you out. Problem is, in Mexico and maybe even some other countries, the mail there isn't all that reliable. So if you're mailing something, it may or may not actually get to them. So like I said, one of those situations where if you can do that rescission in person, it would be fantastic. Though make sure they do give you some type of signed proof evidence that you did go in there and rescind. You want to have that in the case of anything that might happen. And they may claim, hey, we never saw you. Now, if you've returned home and you're no longer in the country where you purchased, this would apply if you were in Mexico, the Caribbean, or elsewhere international, and you're now back home in the United States, or you purchased in the United States and you're back home at whatever country that might be, maybe the UK, maybe Canada, or elsewhere. Well, in this instance, you want to make sure you utilize Registered Mail International with whatever postal service you have. So if you're in the United States, you want to utilize U.S. Postal Service Registered International Mail. This is the most secure way to send a letter internationally. And if you're in Canada, the UK, elsewhere, check with your postal service to see if they have similar method of delivery. Pretty sure they all have some type of Registered Mail International. It is, of course, more expensive. It is also slower to deliver that. But hey, like I said, it all matters about that postmark. Now you can also follow up with just a standard stamped letter, and if they provided any type of electronic delivery like email or fax, definitely take advantage of that. So you've got your letter out via those two methods of delivery. Well, what's going to happen next? Well, first thing I'm here to tell you is they're not legally obligated or required, or probably won't even provide you with any status of your rescission letter that you sent. They might email you back, they might send you a letter back, but chances are they're not going to give you any status. And the first way that you'll probably actually find out that they actually canceled your contract is, well, you'll receive your refund. If you paid via credit card, well, they'll refund you via credit card. But that's really the way you'll find out that they actually did your cancellation. Provide up to 45 days for this. I know it can be really, really nerve-wracking. If you've taken advantage of your right of rescission, you've sent that letter in the allowed time that you have to rescind, you're pretty much good. The timeshare companies, they might tell a lot of things in the sales presentation, but one thing they don't do, they really don't mess around when it comes to rescission. If you've legally taken advantage of your right, well, they're going to honor it. They don't want to mess around. They don't want to cause any issues, get in trouble with state regulators. Something else we now have to talk about here. What about those freebies that you would have received? They could either be the freebies for attending the presentation, and then we also have freebies that you might have actually received when you purchased. So let's talk about the first one here. That's anything you received as an incentive to attend the timeshare sales presentation. It might have been a gift card, shows someplace. Those are essentially yours to keep. Basically, those were your incentive, your gift for attending the presentation for the allotted amount of time. And if you purchased, well, you're probably there a lot longer than the required amount of time that you were supposed to be there in order to be eligible for those free gifts. So don't worry, those are essentially yours to keep. So if you've already spent that $100 gift card, well, don't worry about that. If you got tickets for a show, go and enjoy the show if you haven't already. But we do have that kind of other set of gifts, something you might have received for actually purchasing. One of the things I hear about most often is receiving a tablet, maybe an iPad, and most likely an iPad knockoff, and even including any kind of big books, manuals, that kind of thing, the big resort guide or anything like that. While those really don't have a lot of value, you probably do want to return all of those things back to them, just so they don't try and withhold any money from a refund that they owe you. You'll likely want to return these via the cheapest method possible, so put them all into a package or a box, take it to the post office when you go to send your rescission letter. And also, it might be a good idea to put a note in with the letter that you're returning additional materials that were received for your purchase under separate cover. So get all that stuff sent back, and then you don't really need to worry about anything else, though do be sure to keep a copy of the contract that you signed. All right, now before we finish up here, I want to talk about some important do's and don'ts when it comes to cancellation or rescission of your timeshare purchase. The first one here is definitely make sure you do follow that contract exactly. All of the things I mentioned here, kind of general guidelines, but if your contract says to deliver it a very specific way, well, follow that contract. And then the next one here is make sure that everybody that signed the contract also signs the cancellation or rescission letter. You want to make sure that everybody is letting them know that they wish to cancel the timeshare contract. Now for some of the don'ts. And the first one here is don't panic. If you're within your rescission period, and hopefully you now know you are, then you're pretty much good to go. Just make sure you do everything you need to do to get that rescission letter sent off timely before that rescission period ends. Now the next one I want to add, when the timeshare developer receives that cancellation letter, they need to pass that information on to your sales rep. Your sales rep might then try to call you and convince you, hey, you don't want to cancel. We'll throw in some additional freebies, some additional incentives, some additional bonuses. Don't fall for it. Stay firm. And hopefully, maybe you haven't even answered the phone. So if you see some phone calls from some strange numbers that you don't recognize, well, it could just be them trying to call you. And you might think, hey, they're trying to call me to give me an update on my rescission. It's more likely you're a timeshare sales rep actually trying to save their commission. Now, the last don't here is if you have your timeshare salesperson's phone number or email address, mobile phone, don't try to call them, don't try to text them, don't try to email them your cancellation or rescission letter. They are under no obligation to process that. You want to make sure you're sending it to the address, to the email, to the fax, whatever it might be that's in your contract. My suggestion, just try and avoid the salespeople from here on out. So I really do hope you found this video helpful and it helped you to save thousands and even tens of thousands of dollars by being able to cancel your timeshare contract. And I'd definitely appreciate it if you'd leave down in the comments below maybe how much you actually paid and how much you saved by canceling. I definitely like reading all of the comments of how my videos have helped save viewers lots of money when it comes to timeshare. And also, if you'd like to give a token of gratitude, there is also a super thanks button down below. It's kind of that heart with an S in it, says thanks right after it. That's just a way to provide a small token of gratitude if you wish. Definitely not required. And also, if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Definitely does help out the video, helps out the channel, gets this video hopefully out to more people that have purchased timeshare and that also want to cancel as well. Thanks for watching. And I know you probably don't think this if you're canceling, but the best destination is always a timeshare.